I stood frozen at the restaurant entrance, my heart pounding as my mother's voice cut through the elegant dining room like a knife. "There's no seat for you here, sweetie. This dinner is for family only." The words hung in the air. Everyone at the long table turned to stare. My two brothers, my father, my aunts and uncles, even my grandmother, who used to braid my hair every Sunday morning. They all just looked away. It was my 25th birthday. The invitation had come 3 weeks ago, embossed letters on cream cardstock. Family celebration dinner at Marcello's. I'd driven 4 hours to be here. I'd bought a new dress. I'd imagined reconciliation, warmth, maybe even an apology for the years of cold shoulders and whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. "Mom, what are you talking about? You invited me." My voice cracked, betraying the confidence I'd tried so hard to build. She didn't even look up from her menu. Did I? I don't recall that. My sister-in-law, Jennifer, smirked from her seat next to my older brother, Marcus. She'd always hated me, though I never understood why. Perhaps because I'd gotten into law school when her daughter hadn't. Perhaps because I existed. "Maybe there's been a mistake," I whispered, looking desperately at my father. He adjusted his tie, said nothing. The maitre d' approached with a concerned expression, and I felt my cheeks burning with humiliation as every table nearby turned to watch the scene unfold. My mother finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. "You've made your choices, dear. We've made ours." I turned to leave, my vision blurring with tears, when I heard footsteps behind me and a voice I didn't recognize said, "Miss Anderson? Please wait." I froze mid-step, my hand already on the brass door handle. The voice belonged to a waiter I hadn't noticed before. Tall, maybe in his 50s, with kind eyes and a perfectly pressed uniform. "Miss Anderson?" he repeated, slightly out of breath. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Behind me, I heard my mother's chair scrape against the marble floor. "Excuse me, we're in the middle of a private dinner." "Yes, ma'am, I'm aware." The waiter's tone was polite but firm. "However, Miss Sarah Anderson has a reservation. Under her own name." My head spun. I hadn't made a reservation. I'd assumed I was part of my parents' party. "That's impossible!" Jennifer's shrill voice cut through the murmurs. She wasn't invited to this dinner. The waiter pulled a leather-bound reservation book from under his arm, flipping it open with practiced precision. "According to our records, Miss Anderson reserved our private corner table 6 weeks ago. For tonight, 8 o'clock. "That's ridiculous!" my mother snapped, her face flushing. "She's lying, or you've made an error. Check your records again." I stood there, trembling, completely confused. I hadn't made any reservation. I'd come here because of their invitation, the one now apparently no one remembered sending. "I assure you, Mrs. Anderson, our records are impeccable." The waiter met my eyes with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Miss Anderson, if you'll follow me. Your table is ready, and your guest has already arrived." "Guest?" I whispered. "I don't have a guest." My father stood abruptly. "Now, see here." "Dad, I swear I don't know what's happening." The waiter gently touched my elbow. "Please, miss. This way." As he guided me through the restaurant, past my family's stunned faces, past the curious diners, I heard my grandmother's voice, barely audible. "Let her go. Richard." And then from Jennifer, dripping with venom, "This is just another one of her desperate stunts for attention." The waiter led me through the main dining room, past crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, toward a secluded corner I hadn't noticed when I'd walked in. My legs felt like they might give out at any moment. "I really don't understand what's happening," I managed to say. "I didn't make a reservation." "I know, miss." His voice was gentle, almost paternal. "But someone did. On your behalf." We rounded a marble column, and there, at an intimate table set for two, sat a woman I'd never seen before. She was probably in her 70s, elegant in a navy dress, with silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. She looked up as we approached, and her face broke into a warm smile. "Sarah," she said as if we were old friends. "Please, sit down." I hesitated, looking back toward where my family sat. I could see my mother's rigid posture, Jennifer whispering urgently into Marcus's ear, my father's clenched jaw. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Catherine Montgomery, and I have something very important to tell you." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please. I promise this will all make sense." I sat, my hands shaking so badly I had to clasp them in my lap. The waiter poured water into crystal glasses and disappeared without a word. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm sorry, but I'm very confused. Did you make this reservation? Do you know my family?" Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, studied me carefully. "I know everything about your family, dear, particularly your mother." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "What do you mean you know everything?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, worn at the edges. 26 years ago, your mother made a choice that affected many lives, including mine." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I don't understand." Catherine slid the envelope across the table. "Your mother told you that you weren't family, that there was no seat for you at their table." "Yes," I whispered, tears threatening again. Her next words came out soft but devastating. "That's because, my dear Sarah, you're not her daughter." The restaurant noise faded to a dull roar in my ears. I stared at Catherine Montgomery, certain I'd misheard her. "What did you just say?" "You're not Helen Anderson's biological daughter." Catherine's voice was steady, compassionate. "You're mine," I laughed. It came out harsh, almost hysterical. "That's insane." "You're insane. I don't know what kind of joke this is." "It's not a joke, Sarah. I've waited 25 years to meet you. To tell you the truth." She pushed the envelope closer. "Open it, please." My hands moved as if disconnected from my body. Inside were photographs, old ones, the colors slightly faded. A young woman, maybe 19, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The woman had dark hair like mine, the same slight curve to her nose. The same green eyes. "I was 17 when I got pregnant," Catherine said quietly. "My parents were wealthy, respected in the community. They couldn't handle the scandal of an unwed teenage mother." I flipped through more photos, medical records, a birth certificate with my birth date, but a different name, Sarah Catherine Montgomery. And then, beneath it all, adoption papers. "Your mother, Helen, couldn't have children. She and your father had tried for years. My parents knew them through their country club. They arranged everything privately, quietly. I was told I had no choice, that giving you up was what's best for everyone." "No." I shook my head violently. "No, this can't be real. My parents would have told me. There would have been signs." "Were there signs, Sarah?" Catherine leaned forward. "Think about it. Really think. How did they treat you compared to your brothers?" The question hit like a physical blow. Marcus and James, both tall, blonde, blue-eyed like our parents, while I was dark-haired, green-eyed, always slightly apart. The forgotten birthdays. The college fund that somehow ran out when it was my turn. The constant criticism, the impossible standards. "They adopted Marcus and James, too," I said weakly. 2 years after me." "No, dear." Catherine's expression turned sad. "Those are Helen's nephews. After her sister died in a car accident, she took them in, raised them as her own sons." I couldn't breathe. The walls of the restaurant seemed to close in around me. Everything I'd ever known, every memory, every moment of feeling like I didn't quite belong, it all suddenly made horrible, perfect sense. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why tell me this tonight in front of them?" Catherine's jaw tightened. "Because 3 months ago my husband passed away. He left me everything, his estate, his businesses, his investments. We never had other children. I spent my entire adult life regretting giving you up, searching for you, watching from a distance." She pulled out another document. "My lawyers found something interesting while settling the estate. Your mother, Helen, has been receiving monthly payments from a trust fund I established for you. $50,000. Every single month. For 25 years. The room tilted. "What?" The adoption agreement stated that money was to be used exclusively for your education, your well-being, your future. I wanted to make sure you'd have everything, even if I couldn't be the one to give it to you directly." Her voice hardened. Helen signed documents swearing she'd use it only for you. I thought about my student loans. The 3 jobs I'd worked through law school. The nights I'd survived on ramen noodles while Marcus got a new car for his 16th birthday. James's fully paid fraternity dues. Their trust funds, their vacations, their easy lives. She kept it, I said flatly. She kept all of it. $15 million, Sarah, plus interest. All of it went to your brothers, to their education, to the vacation homes, to Jennifer's designer wardrobe. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. Several diners turned to look. Across the restaurant I could see my mother watching, her face pale. I'm going to kill her, I said, my voice shaking with rage. No. Catherine stood too, placing a firm hand on my arm. You're going to let me handle this. You're going to sit back down, have dinner with your real mother, and watch what happens next. She nodded to the waiter, who immediately approached. Please inform Mrs. Helen Anderson that there are 2 gentlemen here to see her. From Sterling and Associates. Legal counsel. My breath caught. You brought lawyers? Catherine smiled, and for the first time I saw steel behind her kindness. Darling, I brought everything. 2 men in immaculate suits materialized near my family's table. I watched from our corner as the taller one leaned down, speaking quietly to my mother. Her face went from pale to ashen in seconds. What are they telling her? I asked, unable to look away. That she has 2 options, Catherine said calmly, cutting into her appetizer as if we were discussing the weather. Return every penny she stole from you, with interest, or face criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. My father stood abruptly, his voice carrying across the restaurant. This is harassment. We'll call the police. The shorter lawyer pulled out a document, laying it on the table. Even from this distance, I could see my mother's hands trembling as she picked it up. Jennifer grabbed it from her, scanning the pages. This is blackmail. You can't prove any of this. Actually, Catherine said, taking a sip of wine. We can. Bank statements. Signed agreements. 25 years of financial records showing every deposit into Helen's account and every expenditure that should have gone to Sarah but didn't. It's remarkably well documented. I watched Marcus lean over to read the papers, his face growing red. James sat frozen, his fork halfway to his mouth. My grandmother had her hand over her heart, looking between my mother and me with something like horror dawning in her eyes. I don't understand, I said, my voice breaking. You've known about this for months. Why wait? Why tonight? Catherine set down her fork and met my eyes. Because tonight was supposed to be your humiliation. Helen invited you here specifically to reject you in front of the entire family, to make sure you knew once and for all that you didn't belong. The words hit like ice water. How do you know that? Because your grandmother called me. Catherine nodded toward the elderly woman at the other table. Dorothy and I were friends once, before all of this. She didn't know about the adoption, but she knew something was wrong. When she heard Helen planning this dinner, planning to destroy you publicly on your birthday, she tracked me down. I looked at my grandmother, who was now crying silently, a napkin pressed to her face. Dorothy loved you, Sarah. She always knew Helen treated you differently. She just didn't know why. Catherine's voice softened. When I told her the truth, she begged me to stop this. Tonight. The lawyer's voice cut through the restaurant's ambient noise, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Mrs. Anderson, we need your answer now. Full restitution, or we file charges in the morning. My mother's face twisted with an emotion I'd never seen before, pure desperate panic. She looked around the table, searching for support. My father had gone completely silent, staring at the documents. Marcus and James exchanged glances, clearly doing mental calculations about their own futures. This is absurd, Jennifer hissed, standing up. You can't just waltz in here and accuse people of— Sit down, Jennifer. My grandmother's voice cracked like a whip. For once in your miserable life, be quiet. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. I'd never heard my grandmother speak like that to anyone. Dorothy pushed herself up from the table, leaning heavily on her cane, and began walking toward us. The lawyers stepped aside. My mother reached out weakly. "Mom, please." But Dorothy didn't even glance at her. She stopped at our table, looking down at Catherine with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Kathy, after all these years." "Hello, Dorothy." Catherine stood, and the two women embraced like long-lost sisters. When they separated, my grandmother turned to me. Her hand, soft and papery, cupped my cheek. "My beautiful girl, I am so sorry. If I'd known what Helen had done, what she'd stolen from you, I would have stopped it years ago. Grandma, I can't—" The words wouldn't come. "Your grandfather left you money too, sweetheart. In his will, $100,000 for your education." Her voice broke. "Helen told me she'd put it in a college fund for you. She said you'd used it for law school." I shook my head, tears finally spilling over. "I have $200,000 in student loans, Grandma. I didn't get a penny." Dorothy closed her eyes, her whole body seeming to shrink. "She spent it on Marcus's wedding. The one in Hawaii, 5 years ago." Behind us, Marcus made a strangled sound. "That's it." Dorothy turned, her cane striking the floor with each determined step back to the table. "Helen Marie Anderson, you have 1 hour to agree to their terms, or I'm writing you out of my will completely." My mother's face crumpled. "Mom, you can't be serious. She's poisoning you against me." "These people are lying." "Don't." Dorothy's voice was ice. "I've watched you treat that girl like garbage for 25 years. I told myself I was imagining it, that you were just strict, that Sarah was sensitive. But I knew. Deep down, I always knew something was wrong." Jennifer stood again, her chair clattering backward. "This is insane. So what if Helen used some trust fund money? She raised Sarah, fed her, clothed her. That money was payment for what?" I found my voice standing up. My whole body shook, but the words came out clear and strong. "For being treated like a burden? For being reminded every single day that I wasn't good enough? That I didn't measure up?" I walked toward their table, Catherine close behind me. "You want to talk about payment, Jennifer? Let's talk about the car Marcus gave you, the $50,000 Mercedes. Let's talk about your honeymoon in Bali, your designer wedding dress, all paid for with money that was meant for me." Marcus had the decency to look ashamed. James stared at his plate. My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Helen, tell me this isn't true." "Richard, I can explain. Tell me you didn't steal from a child." His fist slammed on the table, making the glasses jump. "Tell me we didn't build our life on stolen money." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every eye was on us. The maitre d' hovered nervously by the kitchen, clearly unsure whether to intervene. My mother's face hardened. The panic disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. "Fine, you want the truth?" "Yes, I took the money, and I'd do it again." The admission hung in the air like poison. She wasn't my daughter. She was a problem I solved for a desperate teenager and her embarrassed parents. I gave her a home, a name, a family. That money was compensation for the burden. Helen's eyes met mine, and there was nothing in them but contempt. "You were never supposed to be anything, Sarah. You were supposed to be grateful." Something inside me shattered and reformed, harder than before. "Sign the papers, Helen." Catherine's voice cut through the shock. "Or spend your 60th birthday in a jail cell." My mother snatched the pen from the lawyer's hand, her signature a violent slash across the document. "There. Happy now?" "Not even close," Catherine said coldly. "That's just the restitution agreement. There's more." The second lawyer placed another folder on the table. "This is a formal severance of all legal ties between Sarah Anderson and the Anderson family. Helen Anderson will publicly acknowledge the fraud and misappropriation of funds. Sarah will receive full access to all money owed, plus damages, plus legal fees." "How much?" my father asked, his voice hollow. $18.7 million, the lawyer said crisply. "Plus, Sarah retains her birth name and all legal rights to Catherine Montgomery's estate as her sole heir." Jennifer's gasp was audible across the room. 18 million? "The trust fund grew considerably over 25 years, Catherine explained. Compound interest is a beautiful thing when you're not embezzling it." I felt dizzy. $18 million. I'd been eating ramen and working overnight shifts at a diner while my family sat on $18 million of my money. And there's one more thing. Catherine's smile was sharp as a blade. This restaurant? Martello's? I bought it 6 weeks ago. The staff has been documenting every word of this conversation. Every admission, every threat. She gestured to the corners of the private dining room, where I now noticed small cameras positioned discreetly. In case you were thinking of contesting anything in court, we have everything on record. Every cruel word, every confession. My mother's face went from red to purple. You set us up. This entire dinner was a trap. No, I said, finding my voice again. You set me up. You invited me here to humiliate me, to make sure I knew I was nothing. Catherine just made sure the truth came out instead. Marcus finally spoke, his voice shaky. Sarah, I swear I didn't know about any of it. The money, the adoption, didn't you? I turned to him. You never wondered why I was different? Why I was treated differently? You never once thought to ask why I was drowning in debt while you got everything handed to you? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. James cleared his throat. What happens now? Catherine answered. Now, Sarah decides whether to press criminal charges. The statute of limitations for fraud in this state is 6 years, but we can prove ongoing theft. Helen could face up to 15 years. Everyone waited. The entire restaurant held its breath. My mother sat frozen, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles had gone white. For the first time in my life, I held all the power. I spent 25 years trying to earn your love, I said quietly, looking at Helen. I got perfect grades. I worked myself sick. I bent over backward to prove I was worthy of being your daughter. And the whole time you knew I never would be, because you never wanted me to be. Sarah, my father started, but I held up my hand. You don't get to talk. You stood by and watched. For 25 years you watched her destroy me piece by piece and you did nothing. I turned back to Helen. You wanted me to feel like nothing tonight. You wanted me to leave here broken. I picked up the criminal complaint form the lawyer had placed on the table. My hands were steady now, calm. But I'm not nothing. I'm a Montgomery. I'm Catherine's daughter. And I'm the one who gets to decide your fate. Helen's eyes flickered with something. Hope, maybe. The desperate hope that I'd be weak, forgiving, grateful enough to let her escape. I looked at Catherine, who nodded once, giving me silent permission to choose my own path. I'm not going to press charges, I said finally. Helen's shoulders sagged with relief. Jennifer actually smiled. But, I continued, my voice hardening, you're going to do something worse than prison. You're going to live with this. Every day you'll wake up knowing that the daughter you threw away is worth more than you'll ever be. That I succeeded despite you, not because of you. I dropped the complaint form on the table. You'll watch me build the life I deserve with my real mother, and you'll know you have nothing. No money, no dignity, no daughter. I turned to Catherine, who stood and linked her arm through mine. Can we go now? I'd like to have birthday dinner with my mom. Of course, darling. Catherine's smile was radiant. I have 25 years of birthdays to make up for. As we walked out, I heard my grandmother's voice one last time. I'm coming with you if that's all right. I turned back and saw Dorothy gathering her purse, leaving her untouched meal behind. She didn't look at Helen. None of them did. The three of us walked out of Marcello's together, 3 generations of women who'd finally found each other. Behind us, silence. Ahead of us, everything.